I never imagined that the person I loved the most would have the courage to turn their back on me, just when I was at my darkest moment. But what I discovered afterward would change everything. To this day, I wonder whether it was luck or fate, and if I would have been able to recognize the truth before all of this. Stay with me until the end, because this story has a twist that no one could have imagined. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and activate the notifications. Don't miss any of our touching stories. And don't forget to leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. I love to know how far our stories reach. Lynn, a 56-year-old woman, always believed that unconditional love was the foundation of her life. Married for more than 30 years to Michael, she devoted herself completely to her family, raising her son, David, with much care. Her life was simple but full of meaning. Every meal was an act of love, every family celebration, a memory she cherished. Lynn believed that life would protect her, that her family would be her support through all moments. She didn't notice the passing of time, thinking she would always have the unconditional support of her husband and son, even when difficulties arose. Her heart swelled with pride for the man her son had become, and she trusted that he would love her forever. However, destiny had other plans. Michael, the man Lynn loved most, fell ill, and within months, he passed away. The house, once filled with laughter and love, was now empty and silent. Lynn found herself alone, desolate, with the weight of the loss and the feeling that the ground had cracked beneath her feet. With Michael's death, Lynn's life was turned upside down. The pain was unbearable, and the house, once full of laughter and love, was now a field of lonely echoes. She looked at the walls and saw traces of her history with him. Her only comfort seemed to be her son, David, who had recently married, and alongside his wife, Emily, appeared to be the only person Lynn could trust. She thought that by selling the house she had lived in for over 30 years, she would find a safe haven with her son. But what she didn't know was that, in seeking comfort from her family, she was about to discover a cruel and solitary reality. She imagined that David would welcome her with open arms, as he always had, but the truth that was about to be revealed would be much more painful than she could have foreseen. Lynn believed that the love between mother and son was inviolable. However, she soon realized that the loss of her husband wouldn't be the only blow life would deal her. The feeling of loneliness began to take hold of her, as Emily's cold and distant behavior, and even David's, became increasingly evident. In the first days after moving to David and Emily's house, Lynn tried to adapt. She helped with household chores, cooked, cleaned, and did everything she could to avoid being a burden. But as the days passed, she began to feel Emily's contemptuous glances, as if her presence were a burden. She felt useless and rejected, but clung to the hope that her son's love would be greater than any difficulty. Lynn started questioning her own decisions. Was she being a nuisance? Should she have sought a life alone, instead of depending on her son? The fear of being a burden, of no longer being needed, ate away at her. Each day became more difficult, but she still tried to hold on to hope. In the dead of night, when no one was watching, Lynn wondered if the love of her family still existed, or if she had become an intruder in their lives. The doubt in her heart grew with every cold glance, and she felt a deep pain inside, as if she were being excluded from something that she had always thought was hers. The tension in the air was palpable. Each day seemed like a heavier burden for Lynn. Then Emily, unaware of the gravity of her words, said something that would break the last thread of hope she still had. "Lynn, don't you think it would be a good idea to look for a job? Maybe something simple but that helps you stay busy." Lynn felt a tightness in her chest. At nearly 60 years old, the reality of the job market rejected her. She tried to look for a job, but was turned away at every corner. With the doors closed, she began to wonder if something was wrong with her. And it was during a dinner, when the tension was at its peak, that Emily said the phrase that would echo in Lynn's mind forever. "David, we can't support your mother forever. This isn't fair." And, with a cutting silence, Lynn realized that even her son, her only refuge, had distanced himself. Lynn was paralyzed. The son she had raised with so much love was now ignoring her. In her mind, the love between mother and son should have been unconditional, but what she was living was a cruel reality. The pain of rejection was stronger than any loss she had ever faced. She felt that, little by little, she was becoming a burden in everyone's life. Alone in her room, Lynn searched for something to calm her soul. It was then that she found a box with old belongings from her mother. Inside there were letters and a hidden journal. As she flipped through the journal, a truth she had never known appeared before her eyes. Her mother had left her a small property in the countryside. A possession Lynn never imagined existed, but that was now the key to starting over. Lynn was paralyzed, not knowing whether to feel gratitude or anger. How could her mother have kept this information to herself? She didn't know she had something so valuable waiting for her. The pain of being rejected by her family felt a little less intense when she realized that life still had something for her, something that could be her refuge. With a heavy heart, Lynn made a decision. She would no longer be a shadow in her son's life. He had pushed her away, but now she had the power to rebuild her own story, in a place where she would be free to live without the chains of rejection. The next morning, Lynn sat down with David and Emily. With a calm but firm voice, she revealed her discovery. "I know you don't want my presence here anymore. Don't worry, I've already found my way. I found a place for myself." David sat in silence, his eyes filled with guilt and regret, but he didn't stop her. Without another word, she gathered her bags and left. Lynn looked back one last time before walking out the door. The house where she thought she would find comfort was now a symbol of rejection. But at the same time, the pain of loss made way for a strength she didn't know she still had. She knew that step was necessary for her freedom. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew she was ready to face whatever challenge came her way. With a broken heart but a relieved soul, Lynn left the house and set off for the unknown. What remained was no longer the past, but the chance to write a new chapter of her life. Lynn arrived in the small town, her heart racing and her nerves on edge. The property her mother had left her was situated on the outskirts, away from the busy life she knew, but at the same time, it seemed to be the refuge she so badly needed. When she saw the house for the first time, the shock was great. It wasn't just a simple house. It was a mansion on a vast and fertile piece of land, surrounded by tall trees and green fields. The beauty of the place took her by surprise, but the feeling of helplessness still lingered in her chest. Lynn walked around the house, touching every wall, every object she came across, as if she were looking for a connection to the past. She knew that this property represented not just a material inheritance, but a chance to start over, to find her own path, far from the shadows of rejection. The fear of being alone still consumed her, but she knew she had to be strong. Here, she would finally have the chance to be the owner of her own life. With each step, Lynn felt the weight of the past drifting away. The pain of losing her husband and the rejection from her son were still open wounds, but this house, with its tranquility and beauty, seemed to promise something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. She knelt in the garden and looked up at the sky, searching for answers. "Can I start over again?" she wondered, a mixture of fear and hope in her heart. Weeks passed since Lynn moved to the countryside, and she began to get used to her new life. She planted, cooked, and, although she missed her family, discovered a side of herself that had been dormant for years. But on a quiet afternoon, when she least expected it, the sound of a car approaching took her out of her thoughts. It was David, her son. He was there, with a face marked by regret, his eyes red, as if he had been crying during the trip. The house that Lynn now called home had become a symbol of her strength and resilience. There, she rebuilt herself, away from the shadows of the past, but with a lighter soul. The weight of rejection had turned into a lesson, and the love she thought she had lost now blossomed again. She found a peace she didn't know was possible, and as she looked to the horizon, she felt that the path was still ahead. Reconciliation with David was just the beginning. Now, with forgiveness and love back in her life, Lynn felt that nothing could knock her down. She knew that life had shaped her to be stronger than any challenge. The soft wind that passed through the trees seemed to sing a melody of rebirth, as if nature itself was celebrating her quiet victory. Sometimes, life's greatest gift comes disguised as pain. But in the end, when we overcome the storms, we find something we didn't have before: true peace. Lynn knew that the journey was just beginning, and she was ready to walk, with an open heart, toward the future she had chosen for herself.